Hello again, this is Riddhiman Dasgupta. A very good morning, good day to you. Today we have a really exciting topic that we're going to cover on this Avi Networks webinar, mitigating SSL and DDoS attacks. Joining me today is our resident security expert, Nathan McMahon, who's also the Director of Systems Engineering. My name is Riddhiman Dasgupta. I go by DD. I head up marketing for Avi Networks. So the topic that we're all faced with today is, it's a well-known fact that, administrators that do not understand an appliance system cannot really secure it. And so we're going to take a closer look at some of the solutions Avi Networks provides to help the most common DDoS and SSL kind of security issues that prevail in enterprises today. So first off, let's just look at what are some of the tough questions that the network administrators are faced with. And there's quite a few questions that you see here. Does my app have any security risk? How long will it take for me to know if a change in config or SSL report or attack is actually going to impact the security profile that I have? Is my app updated with the latest security patches? All of these I'm sure you've heard before, and these are not really easy questions to answer because there's no easy way with the present day load balancer and ADC solutions out there to get a quick and easy answer of what really is happening in the enterprise. The goal really is to empower the non-security experts, the non-security gurus, more often than not, the network administrators that are responsible for managing ADCs. And we're going to look at a few different use cases and scenarios as we go into the demo in a few minutes, how this solution, all of the security insights, is integrated as part of Avi Networks ADC solution. And this comes at no additional cost, no additional modules or licenses are needed to deliver the continuous security insights. So with that, I'd like to welcome Nathan. Nathan, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how Avi Networks pulls off what's the design philosophy behind continuous security insights?
Sure. First off, hello and thanks for having me on. So with continuous security insights, what we're providing is an ability to have a closed loop system of understanding what's happening. As we said at the opening statement, we want to be able to ensure that if you understand how a system works, then you have the ability to secure it. If you don't understand it, you're not going to be able to secure it. A great example of this is that if you look through some of the entry slides there that Didi presented, we talk a lot about some of these various types of attacks, and a lot of these attacks are focused on the applications. And yet the people who are managing the load balancer, managing the ADC, who are managing this infrastructure are network guys. So as a network guy, do you really know the best way to secure the application? Probably not, because these aren't your applications or someone else's, and yet you're responsible for the success and the security of these applications. And so this is where you have this conundrum. And so what Avi is providing is this ability to put into machine learning a system that will identify if there's an issue. If there is, it'll inform you proactively and give you the choice to mitigate this issue either automatically or manually. And then we provide that real-time feedback to say, were you able to mitigate this? What is the success? Did we, by turning this particular knob, did that change or impact something else? So providing this closed loop system is very, very powerful so that you can very easily mitigate attacks, be them network attacks or higher level application attacks. So one quick example of this is that most network guys very easily understand the idea of stopping a port scan if someone's going and just scanning through all your ports, but yet it's a much more difficult task to say, is someone scanning through all of my URLs? Is that allowed? Is that not allowed? So are they doing some sort of a brute force attack? And that's a very difficult task to guess if you're a network admin. And so this is what Avi is looking to do, is provide these kinds of continuous insights here. So one example that we've done here is that Avi has now incorporated into our health score system. We've added the security penalty into this. So the application health score you'll see as I run through the demo of our system will provide you both the health of the application as well as the risk to the application. So the client's experience, are they getting any kind of a resource penalties? Are they getting any anomalies? We're also adding into this, is there any risk from security? And this could be SSL, this could be DOS based. But if something like this happens, you have the ability to drill into this and say, hey, what's going on? Why am I getting an SSL penalty? And where is this stemming from? And what do I have to do to mitigate this? So you'll see a little bit of that, but that's very powerful, and this is the first example of one of the pieces that we've introduced as part of the continuous security insights.
So Nathan, I see here, on the left-hand side, we're tracking the overall application health score, and I think as part of the first software release that Avi came out with, we had, the client score, the resource penalty, and the anomaly penalty. Is this all the stuff about, on the previous slide as you described the CSI, is that what's being captured in the security penalties?
Absolutely. So if you have either a misconfiguration or a configuration that is causing you to be more vulnerable to a security attack or threat, then that is going to be reflected in your security penalty, and that's going to lower the application health score. So the application is up and working, however, it has increased risk. Similarly, if it's something where maybe you're configured correctly, but you're getting hit with some sort of a DOS attack or some sort of an actual live traffic flow is maybe some sort of a threat, then that is also similarly going to be reflected. So this is both configuration notification as well as live traffic.
So how is this done today? Are these different devices, or some of this capability is in the current solutions out there, or nobody has this kind of capability today?
This kind of a integrated closed loop system is something that just simply doesn't exist today. Today, what you end up doing is you use external tools like Qualys to evaluate your SSL health, but then you're using another tool to decide if I'm getting hit with a network attack, and then you're using another tool to decide if, like a WAF or something to say, am I getting hit with an application attack? So you're expected to proactively be monitoring multiple tools simultaneously. And as a network guy, you're expected to do this for potentially thousands of applications.
Right.
And it won't happen.
Sure.
So what Avi is doing is simply saying, here's your applications and here's their health. If there's risk, then that risk is going to be bubbled up. If this is something that's a very high value or high alert, then we're going to inform you, and that informing can be done both via this health score, but can also be done via alerts, a number of mechanisms like this as well, where we can proactively reach out and inform you via API to some sort of a centralized monitoring system, or we can use SNMP, we can use email, we can use syslog. So there's a number of different systems that have as to how we can boil this information down to something very meaningful, very quick, and present it back to you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Cool.
So I'll give you a couple of examples of what this looks like. So in the case of, we talked about configuration. SSL is a great example. We'll start here. And with SSL, ciphers is a good example of you want to enable whatever the ciphers are that are going to allow customers to have access to your site. And on the left there, that's basically what it looks like. If you spell out the OpenSSL ciphers that you're allowing, that's what you've got. And it's near impossible to take this information and do something meaningful with it. Do you have a cipher in there that is less secure? Do you even know if one of them is less secure? The order that you place those in, is that in the proper order to be the most efficient, both in terms of your security, your performance, etc. And if you compare this to Avi on the right, and I'll actually going to take you into a live demo of this because I think it's always more interesting.
So at this point, you're logging into the Avi controller.
Correct. So Avi is based upon a centralized controller managing a number of distributed applications that may also be running on however many load balancers on the back end at however many locations. So within our templates in security and then SSL profile, I'll go and create a new SSL profile. Call this Nathan. And within here, we can see that here's a list of my various SSL ciphers that are enabled by default. And I can go in and disable some. I can go and reorder these ciphers. I can go and change these up any way that I want. And by doing this, the order of ciphers and which ciphers you're enabling makes a significant difference in things like my security score. So my security score here, we're showing you which ciphers are the most secured. We're showing you if these ciphers enable perfect forward secrecy or not. But what's really important is that security is an interesting thing. You can set the most secure ciphers possible, and if you look at something like Qualys, it'll tell you that yes, that's the best ciphers you can possibly turn on. The problem is that your performance may be horrific, both on your end as well as on the client's. This may also impact the compatibility, because just because you're supporting the most secure ciphers doesn't mean that your clients can necessarily support these ciphers. So for instance, if I go and I'll turn on SSL v3, you'll see that my security score went from 100 and then it just dropped down to 70. So we're providing a real-time feedback saying you can enable that. However, we don't encourage you to do so. So the configuration of what we're enabling is something that you're getting a real-time feedback as you're making changes, as you're reordering these ciphers, as you're enabling or disabling different ciphers, then that's going to impact these different scores. So comparing that to that string view of like the OpenSSL style that everyone else is using, which is, just don't turn on weak ciphers. Well, the definition of weak ciphers changes on a very frequent basis. So Avi is constantly updating this scoring. So we're not going to change your ciphers for you, but we will update your scoring saying, hey, by the way, as of last month or whenever, these particular ciphers are known to be less secure. This is going to be reflected now in your score. So that's one example of using continuous security insights for your configuration.
So I think that there's 2 points you made there. One was just the ease of configuration. On the left-hand side on that slide, you were showing how complex it is to do today. So I'm guessing a lot of administrators just set it once and then never touch it. Right. So
what ends up happening is that on most systems that you have today are configured for the optimal performance making. Mm-hmm. In other words, they try to give the best benchmark numbers possible, and therefore they preference ciphers based upon which ones are the cheapest to perform. And so what that means is that they're not prioritizing security, they're prioritizing performance, right, which is fine if that's what you want them to be doing. Mm-hmm. But they give you no feedback or no insight into how to improve that or how to change that. And so that's something that's really important to obviously say, you have full control over this. You can decide that if you want to have performance be the number one priority, you can do so. But that may come at the cost of compatibility with certain clients. That may also come at the cost of security.
Right. So there's the ease of configuration, but it sounds like there's also like a built-in recommendation engine for the non-security experts.
Yes.
So like, this is your overall security score now just went from, what you did was 100 to 70 and things like that.
Correct. So this goes back to if you can't understand a system, you can't secure it.
Right.
If you're the network guy and you're tasked with being able to set these type of parameters for an application like SSL, do you know how it should be set? Maybe, maybe not. And if you don't, that's okay. Avi's going to be able to provide that kind of insight for you and make it really easy so you can't get it wrong. Another piece that we've added as well is within our RBAC configuration, you can have security roles for multi-tenant environments. And these security admins don't have the ability to change configuration, but they do have the ability to set the minimum bar for what security needs to look like. So they can say, our company policy is that we are going to drop SSL v3, therefore this is what it's going to look like. And so they can go and disable that across all tenants. But let's take that a bit further as to why would you want to disable SSL v3. Lately we've seen things like attacks such as Poodle. And with the Poodle attack, SSL v3 is very vulnerable due to the way it's doing some of the padding. So the answer is great. If you need to block Poodle, you just need to go and turn off SSL v3. The problem with that is who's using SSL v3 and is that going to impact sales to my website? And so that's a very important question. You can't just make a blanket decision on security without understanding how is that going to impact the business or how is that going to impact my applications. So if I take an application here, this Broken Link VS, and I'm getting a security penalty, and we can drill into it a little bit later, but I'll go into my application here and I can see both at a high level on the security side. I can say who's coming into my site over the past 6 hours, and I'm getting an SSL v3 is dragging down my SSL score. I can see which users are coming in, what percentage. 100% of them are coming in with, in this case, with non-PFS RSA. They definitely should be using a PFS version of RSA or elliptic curve, but we'll get to that in a bit. But the question is great. So I have SSL v3 enabled here. So, and I do have clients that may be coming in and using this potentially, but I'd like to go and drill into this further. So I can drill into this a couple different ways, both within the security page itself where I was at, which I clicked away too quick. We can look into things like the SSL version. I can see that over the past 6 hours, all clients are coming in with TLS 1.1, not SSL v3. So hey, that might be looking okay. But this is looking at it on a macro level over the past period of time, let's say over the last 6 hours. But I can be more specific and I can say, I've got an individual user here, which is, I'm going to come into this demo.avinetworks.com. So I'll go to this demo site and also do that /Nathan, for instance. And so I'm getting just to generate some traffic. Now, instead of looking at this just purely at a macro level over the past 6 hours, I can also be much more specific and I can say, I want to understand individual client traffic. So I can drill down into this and say, let's show me all client logs, including errors as well as non-errors or just any regular traffic over the past 6 hours. And I can drill this down again. I can show any period of time over the past few minutes, past day, month. And I can go and do something like I can just do a search for something custom like Nathan. And we can see what traffic we get. And we've got a couple of hits here. And I can go and drill into this and say, all right, so in this case, what did this particular user log in with? In this case, this particular logged in using TLS version 1. So I can go and understand who the users are, what they're coming in with, which SSL version are they using, and be very specific and very granular about this. So I can see, I'll even remove my filter here. So if I'm just looking across all traffic over the past 6 hours, which this is primarily load generator traffic, so it's actually not that interesting. We get the occasional script kiddies coming through. But I can see about 99% of my traffic was TLS 1.1, a couple of hits here for TLS 1, a couple of them that just never even got to negotiating the SSL, but I've got no SSL v3 traffic here. So since I have no SSL v3 traffic, I can go back to the business and say, great, let's go ahead and discard SSL v3 support. We've got nobody logging in with it. But if I did have someone coming in with it, then I can drill into it further and I can say, great, let's actually filter down by TLS v1. Let's see who these particular users are. Let's understand them. What browser are they using? What OS are they using? What device? So I can get a little bit more insight into who these particular users are and what they're using, what they're doing.
Where they're coming in from, their location,
correct.
all of that.
So I can find out, all right, so everybody that's using SSL v3 is using BlackBerry 1 and IE6. Do we want to continue support? Yes, no. So the point of this is that we're providing that continuous security insights. We're providing that continuous loop. So we're telling you that there's a problem and degrading your SSL v3 score. We're showing you, highlighting that by doing things like showing you the lowering that score. We could also be proactively sending that information out to you saying, hey, by the way, there's a problem. And we're giving you the tools to be able to say, if you make this change, how do I validate that users are still coming in? I could come back here and I could see things like errors of people that are not able to negotiate my ciphers or not able to negotiate SSL version. Great, then I know that by blocking SSL v3, and maybe I did go and prevent a number of users from accessing our site.
So this is great, Nathan. I mean, what you showed, within just a few clicks here, and you were doing Google-like searches on that search bar. Tell us, with the legacy solutions out there today, how easy or difficult was this, what you just did in the last, 3 minutes to validate, disabled SSL v3, and you could go back to the business and tell them that, yes, these set of folks will be impacted or not. How easy or difficult is it to do that today?
Virtually impossible. Today what you'd have to do is some combination of hitting the load balancer of the application owner, maybe an external device like Splunk, and you're going to have to get multiple departments to all play together to try to give you this answer to decide how the business should move forward. And if you're trying to move at the speed of your competition, that means you need to be very, very agile. You need to have this information right at your fingertips, which means it shouldn't take you a week to answer a very specific question. That should be something you have that information in seconds. So it just is not something that organizations can do today. And largely that's a big piece of why people don't make changes or don't improve or update their security, is they don't know what the impact is going to be. And so that is really critical. If you know what the impact is going to be and you know that you should be doing this, here's the impact, it's very easy to make a business case that we need to make this change.
Makes sense.
So this goes back to, if you can understand the system, you can secure it, and you can know that you got it right. That allows you to be infinitely more secure than a system that has 1,000 knobs, but you have no idea what's going to happen if you touch any of them. So I'll show you one more example that's a little less about SSL and more about just DDoS type attacks in general. So I've got another application here, and if I drill into the security insights of it, I've got a number of SSL issues, of course, I need to go and fix. It's saying that I'm supporting SSL v3, I probably shouldn't. I'm using 40-bit ciphers, and I probably should be using something more secure. I'm not using a trusted certificate, and it's saying, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. But over here under DDoS, I can see I'm getting some spike in DDoS traffic, and it's kicking up to, we've got a traffic generators that are going and hitting us with SYN flood attacks every 10 seconds or so. They hit us with a couple thousand SYN flood attacks.
Okay.
So I see a bunch of it. So I can go and drill into this DDoS now, and I can see who these attacks are coming from. I can see I'm getting hit with SYN flood attacks. There could be dozens of other types of attacks. It could be HTTP attacks. It could be other types of network layer attacks as well. But I can see who these attackers are, where they're coming from, and I can just say, block. And so I can just automatically block these users. Now I've got a couple different choices for what I want to do with this traffic. So first off, all right, great, I know that that information's there. So Avi provides the ability to just notify you when this is happening, reporting on who's doing what. We can also rate limit this traffic and say if we're getting hit with a lot of SYN flood attacks, right now this is a pretty small amount, so Avi is going to take care of it by itself. None of this is going to get sent back to the backend servers. We're going to implement SYN cookies, etc. But Avi will, if this gets more aggressive, Avi will automatically start rate limiting them and just basically putting them into the penalty box as this happens. But we also have the ability to block here, and I can say temporarily just block them for 5 minutes, or I can also just go and add them to a blacklist and say, let's just permanently block this user, or let's block this user for a duration of time. So you've got a number of different choices. And going back to the mitigate, you have the choice of mitigating. There's mitigation that's automated, and then there's mitigation that's manual. So manual meaning I'm going to make the choice of doing some very specific thing, and I'm going to do, let's say if I want to go and block this user. So you've got various choices there of how you want this to behave. And that's what's really powerful about this, is that we're giving you the tools. So I can go into, let's say, my network security and just go and add a new rule here, and I can say if anybody's coming from, let's say from my blacklist, or anybody's coming from North America, then we can either just outright deny them, or we can just say, let's just create a new rate limit. And I'm going to say they can have 100 connections, and they can burst up to 1,000 new connections a second. So I've got different ways that I can go and implement this. So it's a very powerful approach as to how to, very simple. You don't have to know any custom scripting or do anything elaborate, just to say, I can go and add IP addresses to this group, or I can take them out of this group, or I can create a new group as necessary. Or I can just go and, instead of doing it in a group, I can just put in a very specific, and I can say is not in, or create the whitelisting as well. There's some other options as well that you can do. If we drill it down into the application profile, this is HTTP in this case. Under HTTP DDoS, you have the ability to set a lot of limits. We can do something like, I can say if any particular client IP address is sending failed requests to the URL. In other words, they're just scanning URLs, or they're even hitting with something like any kind of a URL flood or an HTTP GET flood or anything of this sort. We can just set that threshold. Let's say at 100 queries, let's say over, 30 seconds, so they can't exceed this particular point in time. So you have the ability to say, now report, we're just going to close them out altogether. I could also do something more elaborate, like say, let's just redirect to competitor and send them that way. So problem solved. So obviously a number of different ways that we can go, and we can understand that who's attacking. We can provide you that visibility, and then we give you a number of tools as to what would you like to do, how would you like to mitigate these particular attacks.
It just seems a lot more intuitive, especially for the network administrator, what they want to do with each of these actions. And the system also allows sort of user-defined actions to be taken, right? So I think that's great.
Absolutely. So if we go back to, obvious differentiation.
Yeah, so I mean, a few things pop out here, Nathan. First off, the UI is really simple. Simple to configure, simple to create all those rules that you talked about. The other thing is, I think, the distributed nature of the architecture itself. I mean, you're showing all of these things, but you're basically managing just one system, not hundreds of individual devices and mucking around with configurations and multiple devices. So a distributed load balancer with a single point of control and management obviously stands out. The inline analytics, well, without investing in the inline analytics functionality that Avi has, none of this would be possible, where we're collecting hundreds of pieces of telemetry data. And then I think the other thing which might be worthwhile mentioning is that the system sort of auto-learns itself, right? I mean, it looks at anomalies, it looks at behaviors before flagging that this is something going on or not. Last but not least, it's the auto mitigation, which to me was the most interesting aspect, and I think that's because of the closed loop architecture of the Avi system. So, folks, I mean, just a few takeaways here. We're bringing this continuous security insights to these new cloud and SDN environments where visibility has just become so much more important than ever before. It empowers these network security gurus, network administrators, to actually use a lot of these advanced security features. provides visibility not just into the ADC configuration, but the application performance. You make a change, the impact it's actually going to have on the application performance. If there's a security vulnerability, it flags it. And then, like I said, the auto mitigation aspect, which I think is just completely missing in the industry today, was very interesting to me. I'd encourage you folks on attending the webinar to try all of this functionality out. We've set up some demo labs here in our offices in California. Just follow this URL, avinetworks.com/try-avi, to play with one of our systems and see all of this for yourself. Nathan, I want to thank you again for your time, and thank you for all the folks that attended this webinar.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.